Well, thanks much, Fred again. Keep on rocking in the free world and do.
Well, thanks so much for the thanks so much for rocking in the free
world. It's on.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so essentially working at KXLU has probably been like just the highlight of my college experience, and just like, I don't know, I think it's easy to get really, really busy and sometimes like have a hard time to find free time and take care of yourself. But I was curious, do you have any insight or advice into how to make time for yourself, and do you have anything you enjoy doing to take care of yourself?
Well, I think it's great having someone like KXLU on the schedule. Like, in other words, I did a show on CITR in Vancouver, still do it, still volunteer. And my show is every Friday. So it's kind of like you put time aside for the show. That's your fun. That's something to look forward to. Like, yeah, there's a way to budget in this show. Exactly. If you want to.
Seems like you got a lot of, like, being like a one-person show. You have a lot of different hats you wear. So I was curious how you find time to just like really take care of yourself, or like what you do is like self-care.
Like decompressing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I am doing stuff for fun. Like, it's fun. It's doing interviews. So you kind of don't have to decompress, or it's just like, it's fun. It's doing interviews, or it's doing rock and roll. I guess if you're doing something serious, you'd have to have some serious downtime. But it's like, oh, I'm going to take time from me having fun? What? It's like, it's all fun. The minute I guess it isn't fun is a minute I will quit, or you should quit. So I guess it's been fun. So I haven't had a reason to decompress or lie down or whatever. It's just fun. It's just, I'm just doing interviewing or rock and roll. It's fun. It's not serious at all.
Yeah. Cool.
So it feels more kind of, it's like work should be play, kind of that idea?
Well, it's not work should be play. It's like, this work is play. It's like, come on, it's totally easy. It's like, come on, I'm interviewing people or playing in a rock and roll band, The Evaporator. Like, that's fun. That's not something cutting edge and serious like being a doctor or being an accountant or being an engineer. It's like totally fun. And if I don't like what I'm doing, do something else. So I don't think there's any reason, all these people kind of complain, like, I've heard some, like, people involved in journalism industry. They're like, oh, we have to cover this election coming up. Oh, I hate elections. Are you kidding? I love going to press conferences. I love asking questions. You're in a position to actually get a press pass. This is people don't appreciate how hard it is, especially as you know from KXLU, like, you don't always get the actual press pass. Here, people getting press passes and they're dissing their job. It's like, come on, it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, that's a beautiful answer. Because I think the culture for like a lot of the industries is for sure to like see it a little more as like a task rather than just it being really something that you enjoy. So honestly, it's really refreshing to hear you say that.
Well, and also for thank you, Peter, and also for, KXLU or CITR radio, I think coming from a college radio background, we understand. Like, I'd be like doing my show on CITR radio between 3:30 and 4 p.m. As I mentioned, I said 3:30 to 5, but originally it was 3:30 till 4. At 4 p.m., the noise show came in.
Whoa.
We call it the noise show. Back east, they call it radio art. But the noise show, and I learned so much about noise, like the guy vacuuming the studio, and that noise goes over the air. It's the noise show. It's like amazing. So a lot of times I'd go over. Like, my show is supposed to end right at 4, but sometimes I would go like 4:20. You're interviewing somebody, you go on and on. Now, the guy doing the noise show, he was also the student engineer. And he had a way of switching studios. Like there's a production studio like B and C, and A is the broadcast. So they could suddenly switch to B control if they wanted to empty out A control, do some repairs or something. He was the engineer, and I was infringing on his show. So I was interviewing a person, and I was like, I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is a great interview. He had actually switched me and taken me off air, and he had started broadcasting right at 4 p.m. or maybe 4:10 because I'd gone over or whatever from B control, and I didn't know A control was off. And I was like, and after it's like, what the hell? But I'm thinking, that's hilarious. It's like a prank. Well, no, I was going over. I guess I deserved it. But it's sort of like the fun aspect of it. Imagine if that happened in commercial radio, like how mad. It's like the listeners probably just laughed, like, oh, I guess Nardwuar disappeared. Like people love bloopers like that. So it's all for fun, like doing interviews like that.
That's amazing. Okay, I feel like that kind of goes into what the next question we really had for you. So it's so much fun to do what we're doing. And Colette and I both really look up to you because of, I think, how much you embrace that. I'm like in a spot where I love everything that I'm doing and being able to interview people and do all these media things, and I still have a really hard time kind of envisioning who I want to be or like how I want to be. I still feel like I'm figuring out how to find my voice. I feel like you're someone that we kind of look to as an example of like, this person has very much gone ahead and like figured out who they want to be. And I wanted to know if you had any sort of advice for like the younger generations like us who are kind of still trying to figure out how we want to express ourselves and what we want to do.
Well, don't give up. And unfortunately, Peter, it takes a long time. When I think back to CITR radio, and I think about the interviews that I turned down, because, I like punk or like mod, but now I'm looking back and thinking, what the hell? Like, I remember this like be fun. It's not really college radio, but I remember like Alanis Morissette had a record release party in Vancouver at a small club, like for 300 people, and would invite and a chance to interview her. And I was like, well, she's a new artist, but she's not punk. I don't want it. But now I look back and like, what an idiot I was. I should have gone to that. So I guess we'll make lots of mistakes, and of course, you could interview a punk band as well. Like, I think probably a couple years earlier, I interviewed Ian from the rock and roll band Fugazi. Actually, I didn't till 99. I put on the gig in 91. But, you can go back between the punk and the mainstream, but I didn't do it. So I guess to answer your question, I don't know, does that answer it? Like, it takes a long time. So it's hard to know right off the bat. Like, I'm talking about like an interview. When did Alanis come out? Like 96? That's almost like 30 years it's taken for me to, but don't wait that long. Maybe I realized, maybe 30, from that point it took me about 5 years. So probably till like 2000s before I kind of just embraced everything. Is that what you were wondering?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, because, I don't know, I feel like that's definitely something that, the idea of, like, doing something new or being willing to experiment, I feel like I had some junior people we just hired to have programs here, and one of them came up to me with, like, a question, like, oh, I want to, like, DI my guitar into the board and, like, try and do some experimental thing, and I was like, I like didn't know what to tell her, and I was like, well, let's try it, because it actually seemed like such an interesting idea, and I had kind of like forgotten that like spirit. So it's really nice to hear you kind of like affirm that idea of just being willing to try everything.
And sometimes you reject it. Like you might say, don't plug that guitar in. We don't do it. We don't do it that way. And you're like, oh, I should have, let that actually happen. Yeah, it takes a little while. But the great thing about college radio is there's always somebody telling you something, or, a group of people exposing you to something new and telling you that this is, the proper way to do things or the improper way to do things, etc. I myself, like every time I go into CITR radio, I learn something. It's like for music, etc. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know everything. You know, like there's always something new to learn.
Yeah. And then to segue. I feel like for me, growing up, my dad always, like, he kind of speaks in, like, quotes and metaphors and just, like, will give me a lot of advice that way. I think one of my favorite phrases of his is, like, you know, you never know who you're talking to because at the end of your life, you're lucky if you have one true friend. So you might as well treat everyone as if they're that one true friend. So I was curious, what is something that, like, you've been given, whether it's, like, advice or a hand-me-down, but just something that you cherish?
Well, I once heard the first 50 years are the worst. Do you really want to wait that long? So, in other words, you know, maybe something is coming. Just keep at it, keep going, something will be coming. I think for me, myself, like kind of encouragement or words of doing stuff is kind of like just like seeing somebody on stage and then them like teaching you something and then just going for it and trying as hard as they can. And also that kind of inspires me too, to like see somebody do something and I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I can't be as good as you, but I can at least try. And eventually maybe I'll be better than you if you drop out. So eventually I'll get there. But in other words, checking out different stuff, that really inspired me, like going to gigs and seeing people perform. Like for instance, the rock and roll band of Cramps, like Nardwuar, the Human Serviette, Human Fly, Lux Interior, rest in peace. Like I love the Cramps. That was inspiring to me because like Lux of the Cramps is an amazing singer. He jumps across the stage. He has amazing taste, like all those compilation records, like songs that Cramps taught us. They cover rare songs and then they turn people onto music. For me, like the inspiration for me is like just reading the liner notes and seeing, oh, the Cramps covered this band. I was trying to think of, well, they've covered so many bands, but you know, a real example is, they covered the Trashmen with the song Surfin' Bird. And then you run out and get the Trashmen's records. And then you find, the Trashmen from Minneapolis in the 60s. Maybe there's some other bands from Minneapolis in the 60s. And you check out compilations from them. And then you think, Minneapolis is kind of close to Winnipeg in Canada. Winnipeg, Canada is from the Guess Who. Some bands went down to record at Norman Petty's loft where Buddy Holly recorded from Canada, like the Fireballs. Like, in other words, like the inspiration for me isn't so much the quotes, it's sort of like the people, the music inspires you to reach out to things. And it is weird how some people get in that way. Like some people get into the music scene liking certain bands and certain bands referencing certain bands, but then they ended up not liking the band that got them into the scene. Give them some props.
Yeah.
Do you, just real quick, I'm curious, was there like somebody when you were younger who introduced you to a lot of the music that you listen to now, or was it mainly you kind of finding it yourself?
Not at all. I was president of the student council in my high school, and also I was grade 9, 10, 11 rep. So I was totally involved in like organizing the high school dances, and people knew that and wanted to come up to me and say, would you get this band to play? Would you get this band to play? And they're all punk, local mod bands from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I'd write their names down, and they're local bands. So I'd go to the record store and I'd say, do you have this record by The Pointed Sticks? And the guy would say, we do, but they broke up, 10 years ago, but they're in a new band, and one of the new bands has a member of The Pointed Sticks called the Frank Frink 5. And I was like, okay, we'll get them to play or dance. And then we got them to play or dance. But it was people coming up to you. So I was lucky. People in my high school were totally into music. And they went out and they searched the local scene, which nowadays you think like the local scene? Well, there was basically, that's what people love, the local scene. So it was not me discovering bands. It was people coming to me telling me get these bands for the dances.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also, I think it's really cool how you talk about like putting on gigs yourself, especially when you're younger. And I did a lot of like live sound and a lot of live gig work, especially back in high school. And that is actually perfect because what I'm honestly really curious about is, like in high school for me, I did sound engineering, and we would do like theater and band and all these different performing arts people, and they'd come in and do shows, and all the parents would be in the auditorium, and I would be so nervous all the time. And I've heard you talk about like nervousness kind of being like a good thing when it comes to interviews, but what I'm really curious about is like, after like a good show, I feel like there's nothing that I've felt that like equates to that feeling. And I really was interested to know if like after your interviews, do you feel good? Is it like a cathartic thing for you? Or is it more something that you're doing because you're super excited and passionate about it, or maybe some mixture?
But with interviews, you don't really know until you post the interview or transcribe the interview or broadcast the interview. So there is really no immediate feedback. As soon as an interview finishes for me, I'm like, okay, we gotta quickly go home and edit it and get it up as soon as possible. There is no actual feelings of like, oh, this one. Now, if you might think, oh, this was great, the guy talked, but I still got to get home and listen to it. Okay, it's an amazing interview, but did the audio record right? Was the light right? Oh my God, the audio is wrong. This is me. So I'm kind of paranoid until I get home and then fully upload it. So I guess there is a distinction between playing live and then doing the interview until it's totally posted. Then I'm happy. Once I'm happy, once it's up there.
And then another question. So I should be wearing glasses. I'm not wearing glasses right now because it's up close and I just need them for far away. But I really hate the idea of putting something in my eye. Like, that just really just doesn't do it for me. We're proud eyeglass wearers. But have you ever thought about wearing contacts ever? Or like LASIK or like a monocle or anything like that?
Well, I guess for me, glasses in high school, I would like put them on. I couldn't see the chalkboard, so I just, wore the glasses. So I do take them off around the house. I don't really think about contact lenses at all. And also for rock and roll, on stage, you would always take them off. And for interviews, you put them on just because, I don't know, it seemed weird not to have them on. But if you notice in some pictures of my band, the Evaporators, or even some Nardwuar pictures, I'm not wearing glasses because I don't usually wear the glasses on stage, because they get crushed or whatever. But yeah, I would love to wear them on. No, I've never really considered that, I guess, because taking them on and off, on and off, on and off. I guess as you get older, maybe it's time to get the laser thing done or whatever. But I kind of enjoy taking them on and off.
Do you feel like, because when I take my glasses off, if I go to a show, I like to take my glasses off because it makes me feel like I can enjoy my moment a lot more. Do you feel like it kind of changes the way you are feeling or the way you interpret stuff with them on or off, or is it just kind of like a pragmatic thing for you?
Well, going to a gig, I would take them off because I would be afraid if I would go in a slam pit that some guy would slam into me. But I would put them on to see the band. So not really. I guess for me, being involved in rock and roll, I just equate, taking the glasses off, being on stage, and being in the audience looking at the band. I don't really consider. Yeah, I wouldn't take them off because I'd want to see the band when I go in there. But if I was in the pit slamming, I would take them off for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for following through with that one because that one was funny for us to write.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
really
and these glasses are like the Oliver Peoples Gregory Peck model. I have another pair that I wear sometimes just for interviews that I got in the 90s, but they're like totally falling apart. And I tried to get new lenses for them, but they said if they did, they'd break the actual frame. So I'm kind of wearing these right now.
Wow.
Is there a reason you like your original pair? Is just the frame?
I just, it's kind of like I just have done a lot of interviews in them. I don't even think about the frame or whatever. I guess it's just like it was the free glasses that I got. I mean, and actually, thank you, Canadian healthcare system, or was it? It might have actually been, it might have been the health that got me those glasses because I was working at the time at the CITR radio as a volunteer coordinator, and I remember they got, so it might have been something to like, I got these for free. I'm gonna get the best value out of them I can.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. This one is near and dear to me, because when I was little, my papa would tell me a joke. Do you want me to tell you the joke first, or do you just want the question?
Oh, go ahead, sure. Go ahead with the joke.
So, there's a skeleton, and he walks into a McDonald's, and he orders a large lemonade and a mop. And that was the joke that he would tell me every day when I was little, and it's my favorite joke, and I really wanted to ask you if you had a favorite joke that you've ever been told.
For me, like a lot of the jokes that I've heard like bands do a joke, to kill time or whatever. But I guess for me, I kind of think about 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're on stage. You're just moving on to the next question. So I'm not really so much into the joking. I mean, some bands, it's like, for instance, like the stage banter. I think Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth once put out a 7-inch just of the stage banter of the band Venom. It's like the stage banter was almost better than the actual music. So he just collected all together. So I guess a lot of those aren't really stuck into my brain, but on the non-comedy front, I remember when I interviewed Glenn Danzig when he was promoting one of his solo records. Before I talked to him, I talked to my friend Rob, who was in a band from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, called the Astro Zombies, which is like a tribute to the Misfits. And he's like, you got to ask some Misfits. I got a whole bunch of Misfits questions. But I thought, well, we can't really ask the Misfits questions right off the bat because that might get them angry. Yes, I've learned. In olden days, I would have gone right to the Misfits questions, but I kind of like eased into them. So Rob told me that like a lot of times on stage, instead of jokes or whatever, Glenn would like say different sort of like stage banter. It might have been Jerry, but still there was some legendary stage banter from Misfits bootlegs, and one of them was like, we pound these guitars like jackhammers. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And I got to ask him about, wait a second, I can't ask him about, pounding guitars like jackhammers because he might get mad. It's a I don't want to talk about the Misfits all the time. So I crafted the question to be like, on your new record, Glenn Danzig, Satan's Child 666. It's really amazing sounding. You really pound your guitars like jackhammers. And then I waited for his response or whatever he answered, but I got the question in there for the Misfits fans. I'm not sure if that totally answered every Misfits fan, but those are the things I remember more than jokes, like the stage banter.
The way like you frame it, I think that's a really awesome answer. Thank you.
And then another question. So I don't know about you, but food for me is like I stick to my comfort food kind of. Sometimes I venture out, but comfort food is the best. If you were like a professional chef running a restaurant, what would your signature dish be? But also that's like building off the assumption that you like to cook, because maybe you don't. Cooking for me is kind of a chore, but it can be fun sometimes. But yeah, what kinds of food do you like, and do you have comfort food?
Well, over the pandemic, I think we all learned how to cook, didn't we? Or we improved on our cooking skills. I noticed I am pretty bad because I'm totally bland. Like the food is like totally bland. I went to the doctor and had like a test of my cholesterol and it went way down. I was like, holy mackerel, this is incredible. And of course, after the pandemic, it shot way up. For me, I remember some Ukrainian relatives would come over to my house, to my mom's house, and spend all day making permeni, which is like Russian ravioli, Ukrainian ravioli. And they would like press out the dough, make it perfect. It was like, it took a long time. That, to me, would be the ultimate thing to make because it was so good to get this permeni. I remember at Christmas dinner, we'd have it like we'd have some permeni and my cousins, and we'd like steal each other's. It was like so good. So I would love to make that. I would make it like every day. So that's one thing that but they spend out, we have to make it by hand. It isn't easy to do it. Like, you might like Russian ravioli, you just get, or wonton rappels, you just wrap some, but the meat was special. The dough was special. The way and then you put vinegar on top of it. Some people have permeni and they put sour cream, like pierogies on top, but no, they put vinegar on top. I think it used to be like, again, a Ukrainian thing, like you'd make them and then bury them in the snow, to freeze them and then take them as you needed them. But yeah, that would be my favorite thing to make. But I could never do that. And what I make is completely bland.
Do you think you ever want to try?
People have tipped me off. Hey, Nardwuar, there's some permeni at that Ukrainian restaurant you can buy, or there's a Ukrainian craft fair. So I will buy some to take home, but I don't think I could ever do it. Like, I know I couldn't do it. Like, I've seen a person, I couldn't do it.
Okay.
But you mentioned like the Nardwuar one-person DIY operation. I guess if Nardwuar Inc. got huge, yes, I would hire a cook and say, first meal, permeni.
You could have a cooking show and all that.
I do. I think I do have some of my mom's recipes, shoved away there. So yeah, it would be pretty amazing.
That's cool.
Well, we're gonna sit here and patiently wait for those to come out so that we can try them in our own homes. But the next question that is not related.
Actually, Peter, this makes me think, like, which celebrities or rock bands, basically rock and roll sort of thing, that go to clubs, like Nardwuar's Video Vault will be coming to a club. Which people have their own food? Like, have you been to a merch stand and seen food for sale? Like, like the T-shirt, the CD, the button, and food.
I don't know.
I feel like some directors have like wine, but I don't know if I.
Well, yeah, actually, now you mentioned like Snoop Dogg has wine. Snoop Dogg has a wine. Yeah. But at the merch table, have you ever seen any food, like a cookie?
No. I don't know. Well, I don't know if it were like. Actually, yeah. One time, I was at a DIY show, and there were like, it was a merch table, and then they were selling empanadas like right next to each other. So I feel like that's the closest thing, but also that's more of like a DIY space. So it wasn't like at a venue where the merch table is and there's the little like setup they've got going on.
Was that at the Smell?
No, that wasn't at the Smell. It was like in a backyard, like I don't even remember where. It was somewhere like 40 minutes from LMU.
That is my ultimate thing. Like, yeah, I love to eat and listen to music. I remember going to like a party at a house and like watching a band and drinking like a big gulp and eating something to me, that's great. I guess some musicians are afraid about food being sold because it gets thrown at them. Although in other cases, like, you don't expect people to bring food to gigs. Another instance, actually, that I can think of right off the top of my head about food is, I don't know if you ever seen that famous photo of Iggy Pop, where he's in the crowd and a whole bunch of the crowd is holding him up. And Iggy Pop, there's a commentator saying, Iggy Pop is rubbing himself with peanut butter. Like he has, and so it made me think, like, how did Iggy get some peanut butter, to the gig? I don't think he brought the peanut butter to the gig, but it was actually Steve Baders from the Dead Boys that gave Iggy the peanut butter. So before Steve was in the Dead Boys, before his solo artist, rest in peace, I guess he handed, he was at the crowd, he just, hey, Iggy, here's some peanut butter, and then rub them. So I guess for some people, food is good. So yes, bad to get the stuff thrown on them, but maybe good for people like Iggy.
Maybe.
There's two sides to it for sure. I think, do you want to do the top two? Do you want to go?
We can do that one and that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what we really, I think, wanted to kind of focus on for like the last couple questions for you is kind of relating back to some of the topics in the beginning, because Colette and I are obviously both here at KXLU, and we have a very great, like, I met Colette through KXLU, so I like wouldn't be here without it, so we both kind of have a lot of gratitude for college radio, and so when I obviously was doing my research, it made me really, really happy to hear the kind of connection that you have with CITR, and I really wanted to just see if you had any input as far as like what CITR you feel has given you in college radio as a whole. I feel like it's kind of in a weird spot with streaming services and all the things technologically that are happening in the world for college radio to like exist. So I love it, and I'm really curious to know if you have any feelings about like why it's so important to continue to do things like college radio, and kind of your experience on that end would be really awesome to hear.
Well, it's, for me, I guess it's a different era. When I joined CITR, there was nothing else. Yeah, right now, I guess you can do a podcast in their basement. Your technology is all in your phone. Everything is there. College radio, when I was starting out, was the only place to do something, and also to meet like-minded people. When I first joined CITR radio, I was just happy for an entire year to like hang out and eat my lunch in a listening room. That was fun, and eventually I got a show, but for an entire year, I was just happy to see other people. And yes, I've met so many people like Randy, who runs Mint Records in Vancouver. In fact, like, everybody kind of ties back to CITR. And in fact, when I was in the hospital, it was like CITR kind of like saved my life, because people knew who I was. People from CITR responded, but the community did. But the community only knew about me through CITR radio. So it's so important. It's so fun to be able to do stuff and meet people there. And also, like, for instance, CITR would give me, in college radio, give me the opportunity to actually go to a press conference. Like, I would go to the press conference and I would see somebody there, actually, who had been at CITR, and I was like, hey, I'm asking this leader a question. Are you here to ask the leader a question? And the person was like, no, I'm just an intern running coffee. I'm like, what? Like, in other words, they left CITR to volunteer intern or whatever at a big station, and the big station didn't let them ask questions. The big station just let them get coffee for the reporter that did. Whereas I was part of CITR, I could ask questions. It was, to get there right on the front line. To get the access is totally amazing for that. It's amazing. Whatever you can do in commercial radio, you can do at CITR. And I think nowadays, so many people, like, they might be like, oh, check me out on Spotify, but they forget about the college radio oftentimes. But college radio, I think a lot of times, is looking for Sonic to play. So you should send out to college radio your release. And when I send out music to college radio before, for me doing interviews, it used to be when I do an interview, it was recorded to cassette, or I recorded it maybe to videotape, but I had nowhere to play the videotape, so I put the audio on CITR. So I take the audio and burn it to a record, an actual record. And then I'd send a record out to different stations, and different stations could play the record with various bands, and there's interview snippets like Nardwuar verses, but it was that hard. Now it's like totally easy to get your stuff out there. Like an instance, like I had to like mail each of those records out. The postage, even back then, like 100 stations, like it was $5 then. It was like $500, but now it's maybe like $12 or $15 to mail one record. It's crazy. But now people, to reach college radio, just go to Earshot dash online. That's a Canadian listing of all the college radio stations. You can get all their addresses, and you can mail your music to those people, and just electronically. You don't have to go through the mail. It's like real easy. And also, you might be like, well, people won't play my stuff. Well, look at their playlist. If you see a band on their playlist that maybe you know and you're kind of like, mail your record. But don't mail your record to some station that isn't going to play it. But the great thing is, maybe do mail your record if it's an old record. Another example, I mentioned him before, Randy from Mint Records, he started at CITR Radio. He was the music director at CITR. And I remember he would actually approach labels and say, hey, give me your records. So this one label in Rochester, New York, gave an Armin Scherbuck record. I think it's Armin Scherbuck. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And it ended up going #1 in our charts. #1. Went to #1. But it was released like 15 years previously. But they were so stoked. The record people were, the Arm was so stoked that here went #1 in that to me is like amazing. It's like playing something you won't hear anywhere else. That's the sort of thing about college radio, is to play something you won't hear anywhere else. There's nothing wrong with the traditional media. We all love that. We love, Spotify or whatever. But what's the point of us aping exactly what you're going to hear on another station? Try to play something that other people won't necessarily hear. Have a unique aspect of that.
Wow. Thank you. That's a good answer.
Actually, or is that an answer to your question?
I think so.
Yes, that was an amazing answer. Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, what exactly did you ask? Sorry. Like, what did I...
So I was just curious, like, what you feel like CITR had given you. And I feel like you talked about it a lot. I don't know if you have more to add on that, but just as far as
also another thing is, like, I have a website, Nardwuar.com, and the reason I have it is the Vancouver Film School heard me on CITR and said, hey, we'll come in, why don't you come and be artist in residence, and we'll build you a website. And that's why I met them. And then for doing further freelance interviews, Jay Maris from Much Music, was like the MTV of Canada, heard me on CITR and got me to freelance for Much Music in the year 2000s. So everything kind of revolved around then. So it was like, also another example. This is like the ultimate example. It's like, okay, I've been doing my show for 10 years. It's time to do an anniversary show. I'm going to go 24 hours straight on CITR. And they let me. So I was able to contact all the other shows, and the program director let me go preempt all those shows. Can you imagine doing that at a commercial station? There's no way to let you preempt all the shows. So it was 24 hours worth of Nardwuar, and I've done that for my 10th, the 20th, and 30th anniversary on CITR. So touch wood, I guess on the 40th, they'll let me go there. Yes, I was staying all night at the station, and I didn't stay awake the entire time, but I put on late night a playlist of stuff.
Cool. That's awesome.
So cool.
And before a computer, in the 10th anniversary, like there was no computer. Well, I would put a long cassette on. It was on cassette.
Oh, whoa.
Nice. Do you remember which cassette you put on?
I remember actually, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with cassettes. I kind of hate cassettes. Oh, don't hurt me, but like I've played back some cassettes, like from the anniversary show, and the speed is all wrong. They're all wonky. It's like they go, and I remember I interviewed on a 10-year anniversary show. I interviewed John Savage. Actually, no, I'm getting confused. Maybe it was the 20th anniversary. No, it's a 10. I can't even remember. 10. It was only 10. Oh, it was a 10-year anniversary show. And I interviewed John Savage, the author of the famous book, England's Dreaming. And I went back recently I interviewed John Savage, and the interview is all screwed because of the tape being, the tape. So that's why I don't like cassettes. I mean, I think they're great, but you have to transfer them pretty soon. Actually, I remember also like recording the mini disc, which was like pre-CD, and the mini discs don't play as well. And you probably have instances where the CDs don't play. It's like, what the hell? But the records keep on churning, and you're still listening to KXLU.
Yeah. I have another question that's kind of like a little bit, I don't know, I'll just ask. But so my first memory searching for like answers was in like 7th grade when I got like the first ever syllabus and I saw printing press and I read like 4 different articles. And then I think like, so this past year, and I find myself searching for answers to questions that like might not necessarily be answerable. And I was curious like what your first memory of searching for information was, and like if you have unanswered questions in your life.
For me, finding information is, I guess, the first place, again, coming back to CITR radio, college radio, is CITR had a clippings file. Like they would play a band and then they'd be filed away and there'd be a clipping, like an envelope filled with information. So to be an article on the band and the music director would clip it out. So I remember like interviewing a band. I think it might have been one of the bands like Guadalcanal Diary. They're like a contemporary of REM around that time. And I remember I didn't really know too much about them, but people at CITR did because there was a clippings file. So I guess searching out, that's the place that I really got a lot of information, the clippings file. But I also remember for finding information, being at my friend Leora Kornfeld's house. She was a host at that time of CBC Real-Time Radio Sonic. It was one of the first shows cross country in Canada that was like use a lot of the internet. Like people would phone in and do internet, and she'd have amazing guests like Gillian Anderson of the X-Files, etc. But I remember being at her house and she said, "Oh, you have to go now." I was like, "Why?" It's like, "I got to do research." I was like, "What? You have to do research?" It's like, "I got to read this book." I was like, "What? Yeah, you have to read a book?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be talking to so-and-so. I got to read their book for like that kind of." I could. And another time at CITR Radio, I saw Beppy, who does a show, and I saw him reading a book. He was going to, I think, interview Nitzer Ebb, the legendary electronic band Nitzer Ebb, and he had like a book. And I was like, "This is a book." So that's when I kind of realized it's like no longer is like the clippings file. It's like elevated to like books. There's actual some serious stuff you can do. So that's the first time that I kind of remember, at least for myself, people really, really nailing the research down and getting a lot of information out there. Because I just thought it's a joke. Like, it is sort of fun. It's just rock and roll. But they were taking it really serious. Yeah. There is a serious element of it. Like I was thinking, it's all rock and roll. But I guess, yeah, Leora or Lloyd, they would take it very seriously, you know.
Yeah. And do you have any, like, questions in your life that you're still, like, searching to answer? Or, like, searching for information to answer?
Well, I'm just happy, basically, there is no questions to answer, really. I'm just happy to wake up with a heartbeat in the morning. It's like, I made it, yeah! And I think possibly when I find, the question, the ultimate question, maybe it's time again to quit because I know everything. So there isn't really, and I'm just happy to be here doing stuff and, to inspire people like, hey, if he can do it, what did he just say? He had like the 10th anniversary, the 20th anniversary, the 30th anniversary. What the hell is going on here? It's like, he could last that long. Well, you can do that too. So that's what I'm happy with that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I feel like our last question is kind of very much related to, I think, what you're talking about is like seeing people and feeling inspired by them. Because I feel like we're both just kind of very curious. Because obviously we know you're doing the Video Vault tour, and we know you're kind of spending like a real genuine amount of your time and effort to showcase what seems like a lot of your life and a lot of your work over your entire course doing it to everybody. And I feel like for like you right now where you are in your life and your career, what do you feel like the work that you have done is kind of meant to you? Do you feel like you've learned any big lessons? And for people like Colette and I, as people who are kind of watching you do that and feeling very much like you've kind of carved out a space for people like us to kind of explore and kind of play with our authenticity and self-expression, as far as like doing interviews that aren't necessarily conventional or chasing after dreams and doing it yourself. I'm really curious to know, like, looking back on everything, if you feel that there's things that you really strongly want to express with what you're doing now, and looking at everything that you've done.
I guess looking back at stuff, like when I think of the past, I think about my interview with Nirvana on January the 4th, 1994, and I think, oh my God, the camera I used conked out. The audio kept going, but towards the end, the video conked out. And I'm so mad about that. So if I could go back in time, I would, try to correct that. That's when I think about the past, that's sort of what I think about. And, like, in other words, like, how could I have done better on that? And for the future, or just in general, like, for me being happy or whatever, like, I would love to be in the situation of, like, where, like, I do an interview and it's not hard to get an interview, but a lot of times it's hard to get interviews still. Like, I have to tell the artist, hey, can you tell your manager I'm legit? Or the manager will not pay attention to you. Not that the artist doesn't care. It's like the manager is more brought up in a traditional sense, like knowing Rolling Stone or Wired or something. That's why when you guys, I thank you for the kind word. Thank you for understanding and even wanting to talk to me, because that inspires me. Think, like, when I'm up, what you give me the interview or whatever, but there's still work to be done. But I think also that sort of drives you too, because you don't have everything coming to you. You have to, like, go to that person. Like, there's all those compilations of, like, rappers or people walking out of interviews. It's like, why are there compilations of people walking out of interviews? It's like, there shouldn't be. It should be titled People Chasing After People Walking Out of Interviews. It's like, if somebody walks out of an interview, it's like, I'm going to go after them because I got some No, if they don't want me to go after them, I won't go after them. But still, I got some questions to answer. I'm not going to let that happen. I want to get those questions answered. So that's another aspect of when I'm doing stuff. I know there's still much to hope for. I'm still trying. I'm still working. And is that sort of what you were thinking, or?
Yeah. No, I think it's honestly, and like in a lot of the times that like I've seen you talk about it, it's really, really, I think the both of us have a lot of respect for you for how much persistence you really have.
Yeah.
And I think it shows because of like how you look at things. Like, it feels like you really care about what's happening. It feels like you really do put your first foot forward and like try to do things regardless of what's going on. It's really, really, it means a lot to people like us, because I feel like we're generally not always the most, like, I don't know, things aren't always the easiest in terms of like finding a path, especially when it comes to the kind of things that I feel like we care about. So I do want you to know, regardless, is like, you've done so much for our generation of people and like what we're interested. So that was really great to hear from you. So
Yeah.
it was a perfect answer. Yeah.
How did you guys discover me?
Oh my God.
I don't even.
So long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I went to a weird school growing to like 8th grade where it was like no technology. was a Waldorf school. So I remember getting to high school and like having a computer and kind of like going online. And I remember one of my friends was like, Colette, you have to watch this video. And he played one of your videos for me. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, I feel so comfortable and safe. And I like, for me, I pay a lot of attention to people's like speech patterns and like how they structure a conversation or how a conversation goes. And I feel like I ask a lot of questions in general, like when making new friends or just meeting people. And I'd never really seen someone that like was like on a screen ask questions like that. So I was really excited to see that and just be like, whoa, you can do this. Like it's real.
And what about you, Peter?
I'm like, I grew up chronically online as opposed to Colette, and I'm like a huge nerd for music, and I spend a lot more time, I think, online than maybe interacting with people, and I think I don't know when I exactly found your interviews, but like watching the interviews, and there's something about seeing the way that the people you're interviewing respond to you that is like, and I think it's super interesting that you said it made you feel comfortable, because I wanted to say the same thing. Is like when I was in like the pandemic, I went to your interviews a lot, because there's a certain level I feel like when something I care about a lot is like removing any kind of convention and like dropping walls. And I feel like the way that you've chosen to interview and the things that you kind of do when it comes to like how you're interviewing do a lot to like really put forth a message where it feels very genuine, it feels very authentic, and I feel like it made me feel so much more okay with the ways that I am and the ways that I want to be. So I feel like that's kind of what got me hooked, and that's why I feel like we both have so much respect for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored. That means so much to me for like just a dumb, stupid interview. Because, you know, when I started DJing and doing interviews, I never thought that people would watch the interviews and actually like the interviews just for being the interviews. I never thought, even for TikTok, that people would like mouth the interviews. Because at that time, it was kind of like all about the artist. It wasn't really about the interviewer. Like, in other words, it was great to be acknowledged, but for you to say that, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. You know, that inspires me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
we really mean it.
Yeah. And then I was curious, is there anything that you would like to say to KXLU listeners or would like to tell people in general?
Yeah, and especially about your show also. If you feel like you want anything for us to plug in, please do so, because we'll make sure to stitch it.
Well, from KXLU, I actually have been on the station. I think it might have been in the 90s on DJ Senior Amour's show, the Molotov Cocktail Hour, which is still on with Cyrano as well. Do you know that show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's Tuesday nights. And DJ Senior Amour is going to be the DJ playing with me on Nardwuar's Video Vault happening at the Fonda Theater. So there's a KXLU connection. And actually, Senior Moore said he brought a poster of mine.
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
There is. It's a big poster.
Yeah.
Yes, a nice silk screen poster. Yes. So thank you, Senior Moore. And at the Video Vault, I'm going to play some of the interview clips that I've mentioned to you and some that I haven't mentioned to you, do a question and answer and talk and give a little insight into some of the stuff. But yeah, it won't exactly be kind of like you scrolling the internet. Oh, let's check out this. It's not me playing videos and, oh, let's have a watch party. It's going to be me talking as well and Senior Moore DJing. But his show kind of typifies people involved with college radio, doesn't it? Like he's done it since the 80s.
Yeah.
He does it because he loves it.
Yeah.
It's like it's not a job. Other people treat it as a job, but it's fun. It's like a lifestyle choice. On CITR, we have the same thing. Like there's a rocker show that's been on forever. The folk show has been on forever. The jazz show has been on forever. Like all these people just enjoy playing music for fun. Like just for fun. And they do it no matter what. Like if they get fired, then it doesn't matter. It's still going to do it. Where a lot of other people, traditional media is like they get fired to find a new job or whatever. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but they aren't really into it. Like, it's amazing. So I really appreciate, KXLU having me on in the 90s and, giving a chance. Like Senior Moore said, come on my show. You can play your demo tape. And I played some clips or whatever. And later on that evening, I did an interview with Jan Brady from the Brady Bunch. Do you remember the Brady Bunch? She did the original Jan Brady. Like when we talked, and I ended up seeing the band Pansy Division as well. Like he took me to all these gigs. It was like incredible. So but I met him actually. How did I meet Senior Moore? Well, I met Senior Moore through a guy called Steve, and Steve's wife, Maria, rest in peace, had gone to LA and seen a roller skating singer called Joey Cheesy, and came back to Vancouver, Canada, and raved about Joey Cheesy. And Steve told me about Joey Cheesy, and I knew Steve through Leora Kornfeld, who did a show on CBC, who before did a show on TR. So basically, CITR KXLU connected through College Radio Love. Like, that's how it all connects.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. You are always welcome at KXLU.
Yeah, anytime.
It's anything that we can do for you, we will do. Please, just so that you know.
Well, thank you for getting the word out on Nardwuar's Video Vault. I really appreciate you helping spread the word to tell people about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
It's awesome.
Do you want to get a photo?
Oh, can we like
How do we?
screenshot it?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure.
Oh. Where'd it go?
Okay.
Wait, you do it.
Oh, hold on. Let me change the light. Oh, hold on. I'll get the.
Awesome.
Do you get it?
Oh, actually, if you want, do you have a phone? Maybe you could take a phone and a.
We did both.
Okay. I'll do another one. Do you want to point?
Awesome. Cool. We got it.
And do you want me should we end it? So do you want me to do it individual? Because if you want, I could do like 2 extras. Like, thank you, Colette. Keep on rocking the free world, and doot. Thank you, Peter. Keep on rocking the free world, doot. And then you could,
that'd be awesome.
like end like separate.
Yeah, I feel like doing both of us might be nice.
I'm completely on board if you just want to say it to both of us.
Yeah,
because
I feel like we can do it together.
I think together would be better. Thank you so much. This is like so sweet.
Okay.
I think I'm okay if he just uses our name.
Yeah.
You can use our names.
Okay. We'll try one. And well, thanks so much, Colette. Thanks so much, Peter. Keep on rocking in the free world, and do. Great.
Awesome.
Was that okay? Did that work?